Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is, wherever you are. Welcome to the Grain Market Blast with myself and the gorgeous goddess of grain, Angie Setzer herself, where Angie will be providing us with a rapid roundup of the latest pricing flows and market moving news in agricultural markets. But before she does, I'll get the legals out the way. Nothing discussed on this space session constitutes trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ, myself, Ryan Paisley, or indeed Angie with a capital G for glamorous, Setzer.
I'm going to start writing my name like that, though. It's just going to be capital A and capital G, R-E-N. And actually, now that I think about how that would look, it's actually very, very fitting. Anyway. Oh my gosh, I almost said Wednesday. Thursday.
Unfortunately.
I'm just like, what day is it? I have no idea. I just know I need to show up to work or else people will be mad. It is wheat harvest here too, so I'm a little bit like Chris Farley at the end, like in Black Sheep when he rolls down the mountain. Yeah. Like, that's how I feel right now. It's just kind of wheat harvest is just one of those where it's like it goes in 3 days and all of a sudden you're done. But anyway, happy Thursday. Just looking at big things to start the market, or big topics of conversation today. I'm going to say the biggest one is the new Coke, old Coke. And I would guess if you actually put it to a vote, the majority of consumers would like Coca-Cola to revert back to their old recipe, but not talking about cane sugar, just talking about the other additive there, as opposed. So I don't know if you caught it or not, but Trump posted yesterday that Coke had agreed to go back to cane sugar for its products. Good job to Coke higher ups, and then obviously the Coke higher ups were asked, and they were like, "Oh, what we did? We have some new offerings we're kind of excited about." And so really, I think this is going to be a big nothing burger when all is said and done. But I have seen a few people here this morning be like, "We use 1.2 billion bushels of corn and high fructose corn syrup, and that's gone now." And like, no, it's not. Like, we've been fighting this high fructose corn syrup versus sugar thing for a while, honestly. I'm going back in time here, but this was a topic of conversation, I think 2010. You did see the USDA make some adjustments to high fructose corn syrup demands because we had this sort of transition in diets and some of this other sort of thing reverting back to it. But as a chubby girl, I'm going to tell you, this is just pure fat girl logic. High fructose sugar, sugar's better than high fructose corn syrup for me. I'm way healthier now. Come on, you guys. Let's get a grip. So, from an overall standpoint, it's probably going to pick up a little bit of chatter. I think you saw corn. It's probably not under pressure from that. Mostly, I think under pressure because we saw the, forecast in the 10 to 15 kind of cool off a bit on the AI side of things model wise. But in any event, there are a lot of people, kind of making a lot of noise about new Coke, old Coke. And when it comes down to it, it's probably going to be here is your option, for Coke with sugar if you like it. I think Pepsi, I thought they already have done this, but anyway, we got trade chatter around the world, things that we're paying attention to. The conversation that we had yesterday with Eduardo from AgriInvest there out of Brazil was super awesome, super interesting. I posted it on Twitter. I'm not one to really beat my own drum or toot my own horn, honestly. I hate it. I don't, self-promotion. I'm allergic. But it is something that, if you have the time, take a look, because it was a really interesting conversation. And one of the things that, we've been talking about a lot here, and I've mentioned it on this call so many times I've lost count, right? That, balance sheets are one thing, grain flows are another. And Brazil, I think, is really going to prove that this year, simply because we have this sort of concept or this idea, in recent memory takes us back to 2023, where, Brazil basically exported 40 million metric tons of corn between July and December of that year and absolutely destroyed our market structure, just basically, took away a lot of export demand because they were undercutting U.S. values so significantly. There was a sharp, rise in price in the extended, or in the deferred market. And so you saw basically, every market out there has a hole that they're trying to fill when it comes to demand. And so basically Brazil came in late in 2023 and just filled all those holes, for lack of a better term. the U.S. was left with no holes to fill. It was kind of a bummer. And so, a lot of folks thought that that was what we were going to see happen this year because Brazil has got a big crop. There's some arguments out there that it's over 150 million metric ton. Most folks are kind of like, nah, it's 130, 135. That tends to be where market consensus lies. But the fact is we're not seeing the push into the export market like so many people had expected. For one, we had much smaller ending stocks, so we did have, domestic holes to fill in the country first. And that's always one of those things that you will see grain ooze in those directions. You had a slower harvest, so you didn't have a panicked farmer trying to puke supplies, into the pipeline like had a phone call. And you really don't have a lot of farmers selling, honestly, because they're losing their butt. And so, one of the biggest things that we're seeing right now is that Brazil's really not coming into the market aggressively with corn. They're really not looking to do anything until about September. And so there's a lot of questions over what their overall export book will look like, but it's always going to be one of them 500-pound gorillas in the room, where if things change dramatically to where the Brazilian farmer, is making a lot of money or whatever, they will unleash the beast, if you will. And so it could cap rallies, but at this point in time, I would say that, from an end user standpoint out there in the world market, if you were sitting here thinking that you were going to be able to buy a bunch of really cheap Brazilian corn, for July, August shipment, even into September, you're finding out the hard way that it ain't there, but Bubba, it ain't there. And the same can be said out of Ukraine and the EU right now, simply because they're struggling with weather conditions and things like that. And so the biggest thing I want to say to that is, like I said, balance sheets are one thing, grain flow is another. And I think that's part of why you're seeing this market kind of, probe for a bottom here, even though wheat just can't get a hold of itself. But you're seeing global cash prices continue to move higher, even if the board's moving lower. And I've been doing this, for quite some time. And that is one of the things that like the old timers taught me early on. If cash continues to move higher, even if futures are falling or are weak, that's bullish eventually, basis cash futures. So, with that, really we're just going to see what weather says, what weather does. There's been some talk that there's going to be increased risk of hot and dry conditions in August. We'll see. I mean, that's been something I think the market's going to be like, fool me once, shame on you sort of deal. Simply because we've been talking about hot and dry since last year for this year. And it's been anything but dry. It's been hot. One of the things that I think we have to pay attention to in these yield, forecasts that we've been seeing, and this idea that production is just growing exponentially with every rain that we have, is that the Eastern Corn Belt at night, it has been far warmer than normal. And so one of the biggest things to get you to a record crop, I'm not an agronomist, but I have stayed at several Holiday Inn Expresses, is basically cooler nights. You have to give the crop a break. Warmth during the day is fine as long as it's accompanied with moisture, but if you're having these really, really warm nights, they just can't, it's not part of, one of the things that you would say it would contribute to a super record yield. And so this is going to be one of those things we're watching. We're going to see if the heat kind of builds in here. We've still got 2/3 of the corn crop to pollinate. We are hearing more and more about this sort of tassel issue that we have. It seems to be genetics or related to certain traits or whatever. So that'll be interesting to see like who it is, how it is, where it's coming from, how bad it is. Like it's really only one of those things where, in another 3 weeks, we'll probably have a clearer picture. It may be nothing. It might be something. Hold on to your butt. But other than that, we've just kind of watching what's going on in the outside market. I do think one of the things that you saw yesterday was when we did look like we were going to be firing, Powell, the wheat market and the corn market, and everything kind of caught a bid. Soybeans had their own little bid underneath them. There's talk that China's coming into the market. There's talk that weather's going to turn off hot and dry in August. This, that, and the other thing. But I do think, obviously if you do see Trump make a move on Powell, that'll, especially, to bring someone in who's super dovish,
Yeah, exactly.
right? Dovish is a rate cutter. That's inflationary. Just plain and simple. And so from an overall standpoint, mostly that, I guess, and, weather and, Yeah, that's it, I think. So, anything you want to add, Ryan? Trade wise, I don't feel like we really had anything of
Well,
substance, did we?
we heard this morning, Trump seems to be saying that India's close again.
Oh
But
yeah, India's been close since
yeah,
April
right.
1st.
Again, very much remember Trump's first term, and with the Chinese, it was the 90% done.
Right.
But for like 4 years, that's the vibe I'm getting. But no,
Hmm.
it seems to be, everyone's sitting on their hands and waiting for the next shoe to drop, basically.
Yeah.
But that's it. Angie.
Oh, I did want
Oh,
to add one
go
thing.
on. Yeah, go on.
One thing I think is important on trade, forgot. One thing that is important on trade, you did see Canada put a 25% tariff on Chinese steel. And so that did send, China meal and bean prices higher overnight because there was a thought that you would see, Canada and China maybe kiss and make up, as a way to fight against the US. And that is not happening. So that looks like that could continue to influence canola imports. We'll have to be watching that. So yeah, that's it. Sorry. What were you going to say now?
No, all good, all good. Andy, thank you so much. As always, you're absolute rock star. No one appreciates you more than me, I'll be
Well, I
honest.
appreciate that.
Oh, stop it. But anyway, so sorry, listeners. So this is just me and Andy for a little love in there. But yeah, whatever you guys are doing, listeners, if you're in the fields or if you're trading, keep it tight, stay safe. And yeah, we'll see you all tomorrow. Much love.
Have a good one, guys.